gotta turn off the sound. Oh, are we live now?
My mic wasn't on. All right, your mic's
Oh
on.
gosh.
All right, off
This
to
is
a
like
good
behind the
start.
scene looking under the
Yeah,
hood here. All right.
this is the Coffee and Cookie Show with James.
And Terry. I guess we're starting now. Is the official
Yep,
start now?
yep. You should see it on the screen. I see it on the screen. There it is.
I see on the screen too. All right.
Yeah,
I don't
so
know if anyone is actually
we
commenting
don't have
here, but
anyone here yet. Don't have any of the top
here we are.
fans
Plenty of time
attending.
to sort through our technical difficulties.
Actually, I have two viewers.
You do? Yeah, we have you and I.
Hey, man, that's two more than we had like 10 minutes ago. And you're
All right,
drinking that
welcome to our.
red soda.
Thanks to James' work on this technology, we're trying this, multi-destination, multi-location podcast live on Coffee and Cookie Show.
Yep, and this time it only took an hour about to get things rolling, about 45 minutes. And I even have a sticky note that says, use the solo button, that the sound issues. It's weird that it's like not even video. Well, actually, green screen, you'll notice some green screen issues. Not on mine. Mine's a nice thing. Or maybe I'm
I
just
don't know what's
actually
going on
at
with
the.
mine, but I am trying a green screen behind me. I bought it just for this show, so we are investing into the show. So please click that like button and subscribe to help us fund this program.
Yeah, I see a view, so I don't know if that's one
Who's
of
viewing?
us or I can't tell.
No, it
Anyway,
says two watching now. That's you and I.
all right. I
Well,
see. So
I'm notifying my family to join our live show, so hopefully they will
the
join. All right, what are we
yeah.
talking about today, James?
Well, hopefully everyone can see the screen. It says conspiracy theories. Normally, I would play a
Theories.
sound effect right now, but I didn't have time to load up my sound bar with all these like goofy effects that DJs do. Next time, life goals. Next time, but I do have my snack of the day, which is honey mustard pretzels.
And today's sponsor for the show is on my side. It's Nerds. Nerds, your
Yeah.
everyday gummy cluster. It rich in vitamin C and sugar. So if you need a boost of energy, Nerds is your go-to.
And yeah, good stuff. We're filming in the Pacific Northwest where it's very hot because it's summer. But speaking of hot topic, I was having a discussion last week with a friend, and we're suddenly, I don't know how I got on this topic of moon landing and flat earthers. So that's going to be our two conspiracies. See, I put the moon here and the earth, which isn't flat. So sorry. So
Earth.
anyway,
I have moon on my background. What is your background?
my background is like the city of the eternal future or something, the AI
And
future,
that's supposed to be Earth.
where I don't know, it's AI did it. I mean, it's not the best. Yeah,
All
there's
right.
yeah, it's kind of earthy. Yeah, except
All
there's
right.
some weird stuff going on. Anyway, so the most popular I think that you kind of hear of a lot are the flat earthers, which I mean, you can guess if you don't know, they believe the Earth is flat, and moon landing, which they just believe that we never landed, we never went to the moon. So those are the two big ones. And now, if you have a gun to your head, Terry, which one would you say? Okay, fine, one of them has to be fake. What would you think is fake if you had to pick one?
If I have to pick one, it's pretty easy for me. I think flat Earth theory is it's fake.
Why is that?
Conspiracy theory about moon landing. I'll talk a little bit more about it on why some people think it's a conspiracy, but I think it's more plausible than flat Earth. I mean, I think flat Earth is just probably intelligent people, but not intelligent. Um, uh, Around on their environment, what's around them. So I would say flat Earth is the less believable one. What about you?
Yeah, flat Earth. And to be clear, not here to like insult or mock people, but obviously I mean, our take is different. So I think anyone, I just hate to see like 1,000 comments. Actually, I would love 1,000 comments of any comment. But I would hate to see someone like say, "Yeah, I'm very offended." I don't not to offend, but just believe. No one likes to be told their beliefs are wrong, but in this case, I think they're wrong. Flat Earth, yeah, we're not going to spend too much time with flat Earth because I don't know. That one is just insane. I mean, it just kind of goes against. Now, there's this term called pseudoscience, science, and I kind of think it's better to kind of say selective science, where people just choose to believe in certain. They pick and choose certain facts that go along with what they want to be true, and the other science they say, oh, that's false. What do you think, Terry?
Yeah, I think a lot of people just, I think as humans, we like to create our own explanations. What makes things fascinating. I think in humans' nature is that we look for data to support our narrative. And I think flat Earth is it's a bridge too far, at least for me. I watched a documentary about flat earthers, and if I squint my eyes and never leave my house, what they have to say probably could make sense. But if I go outside, travel a little bit, look around the world, it's just hard for me to believe flat Earth conspiracy theory. But I know you did some research about the argument for flat Earth, so I'd love to hear what you have to say. I mean, I did some research on. I mean, you don't have to do too much research. I mean, this is, faking the moon landing is one of the most popular conspiracy theories. So I think a lot of people speaking around it, but we'll spend some time talking about some of the top um, um, data points on why people believe we never made it to the moon and back.
Yeah, with flat Earth, it's an interesting thing because there's this a whole mindset that we used to think. Most people thought the Earth was flat, but then when they do more research now, they say, well, we're not sure how many people because they weren't doing worldwide polls 1,000 years ago, so it's hard to know. But if you were plopped down on Earth and you had no memory of anything, I suppose, yeah, you walk around, it seems pretty flat. I mean, Neil deGrasse said if you shrunk the Earth down to a size of a cue ball, it would be as smooth as a cue ball. So you wouldn't even feel that,
Mm.
like, because you think, oh, these mountains, how could that be as smooth as a cue ball? That's an interesting thought. That'd be that smooth. That even 30,000 feet is not a lot when you're talking 26,000 miles. Is that the circumference? I think it's something like that. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, it made more sense in the past. You think, oh, okay, I guess it's flat. You kind of walk it. Also, not knowing how big the Earth was because we had these oceans keeping countries apart, and no one really. I mean, for a while, people weren't traveling across the greatest oceans because it was just too hard, and that kind of got broken. So I understand, but even then, anyone 10,000 years ago could look at the moon and you'd see the moon is at least round. And I think maybe that's why flat earthers are willing to say, okay, well, it's a disc. No. So they're not saying it's like a
A
weird
sphere.
shape, a round. Well, yeah, but they're also not saying it's like a rectangle, although some actually do believe that. People can believe anything. But the majority go with the disc theory. Like, okay, and I guess that's because the moon is a disc. Now, how do they get around gravity is probably one of the biggest things, and that makes sense. I mean, okay. And what is their thing? Do you know their thing about gravity, Terry?
Yeah, I think I saw something. It's a disk that is accelerating upwards, right? So the acceleration going upwards is, it's kind of like when you're driving in a car and you accelerate, it pushes you against your seat, pushing you back. So the flat earthers believe that we all live on a disk that's constantly accelerating upwards in space, and that's what creates gravity. Is that what
Yeah,
you
yeah.
researched?
It's the accelerating disk, and now we don't. There's no reason to get too deep because there's videos that cover all the problems, even with that. I mean, there's a million problems with that. But to me, if I were talking to someone and they mentioned that, I'd be like, okay, all right, we're done. There's actually no reason to talk any further.
Nice
It's like,
talking to you.
oh my, it's like now who made that up? I don't remember. But that's a pretty. They kind of collect. There's no like one size fits all. People like there's little sections and groups and cults maybe, and they all kind of have, but they all seem to like that one because it kind of explains a little bit. And what do you think? What about the moon? Why is the moon also going? Oh yeah. And what about the stars? How come the stars rotate? I mean, here's just like to actually have to try to come up with reasons for everything. That is just mind-boggling. That it makes so much more sense. It's like Occam's razor. That all things considered equal, the simplest solution is usually the one that's right. And it's like it's a sphere. I mean, they're just like I just couldn't even argue with that one for very long because it's just the amount of ridiculousness. But there are other things that I think of. I think, well, what about if you flew to Japan? I mean, if you flew over the United States to kind of go the other way, wouldn't you notice there's like you land and you're flying over water? And how did you get to Japan in 9 hours? So they'd argue, well, Japan isn't where they said it is. Everyone's a liar. That's the whole thing. It's like everyone that says it's a globe is a liar. Scientists are liar. Doctors lie. Just everyone. The government is lying to you. It's all fake. And like, all right, well, okay, you don't believe anyone. And some of these conspiracy theories, they only believe things they can actually empirically experience, things they can see and touch. So there's like one lady, I guess, that they asked her, did you believe that the Boston Marathon bombing was fake? It's like, yeah, unless I actually got my leg blown off, I would believe it's fake. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, we have one person joining us. Is my daughter Lainey. Hello, Lainey. Shout out to Lainey, who's currently in Portland. I don't think she's a flat earther, but maybe she
Yeah.
can comment in the live channel. Yeah, I watch a documentary on conspiracy flat earthers, and I don't know if you know this, but there's even a flat earther convention. People go, all the flat earther, get together in one place, and in this documentary, the camera would go to this place and interview some people, and you kind of, the impression that I get is like there might be like a handful of people who actually believe in the conspiracy. And everybody else who goes there just kind of like it's kind of going to a Star Trek convention. No one really believes it's a Star Trek, but they just kind of go there because they're having fun pretending like flat Earth is a legit thing. So some of the interviewer they will even say like, yeah, I believe in that flat Earth, and they just laugh. Right, like I don't really believe it, but I'm just here hanging out with other kooky people and just make pretend. So maybe it'll be fun one day when we have too much time on our hand, James. You and I can go to a flat Earth convention and hand out medications. They probably need some, especially for the people who actually believe in flat Earth
Yeah, because there are
theory.
some that do believe in it, and I talked to one person, or I overheard a conversation, and he was just saying, yeah, it's like the whole thing about pilots saying the Earth is curved when they're up so high. It's like, oh, that's fake. It's like, yeah, there's this pilot that came out and said like it's like all a lie. It's like, so one pilot is telling the truth. Every single other pilot in the world has been lying for whatever reason. They're all in on a conspiracy. Why? Because you have to kind of think of like, what's the end game? What's the motive? What's the reason for doing anything? Because if you're lying publicly, you're taking a risk. And it's like, why risk
Yeah.
something with zero reward? Like even people that like skydive off cliffs, the reward is the thrill. I mean, why take that big of a risk? But people don't do things that are risky for absolutely no reason. So I just think, yeah, could you ever think that maybe one pilot is crazy and all the other pilots are saying there's just no reward? So why it just goes against human nature to take a risk with no reward.
Yeah, I don't know, but maybe we can move on to the moon landing conspiracy theory because
Yeah,
I
okay,
think there's
yeah.
more credibility behind the moon landing conspiracy theory. Um, and I think the people who believe in this are, I mean, they're still cuckoo, but I think they're less cuckoo than the flat earther. I think it's a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most kooky. Flat earthers, are like 8 and 9. Moon landing are probably like 2, 3, or 4. I mean, I think it's still there's still a disbelief in science and facts, but it's a little bit more believable than flat earthers. Before we go to the moon landing, James, when you say you talked to a friend last week about these conspiracy theories, are you saying this person actually believe in flat Earth
No,
and
no,
faking
no.
moon landing,
Yeah.
or are they just you talking about how
I
kooky
actually don't
other people
know.
are?
I don't know anyone that believes in flat Earth or the moon landing. There's higher percentages, yeah, by far, especially in like Russia or places where there's motivation to not want to believe in it. But we go back to like, why would people lie? There's a lot more reason why the government or people would lie.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think they
Yes.
did because of the whole fact that like you're talking 400,000 people, and that whole statistics of trying to keep a secret. And they said, how could 400,000 people keep a secret? Well, the government will kill people or threaten them. Well, what about on their deathbed? Well, they threaten their families. whatever. It's like, what if they had no family? Well, yeah, it's like, and then one guy came out and wrote a book, and you just think, if the government's so powerful that they could silence 400,000 people, but can't silence one guy who writes a book, it's like, if you can do all this silencing, why didn't you just silence the guy that was writing the book? I mean, how hard would that have been? Kill one guy instead of threatening 400,000. So
All
there's
right. So
motivation to lie because of the space race and then beating the Russians and whatever. So there's a lot more plausibility for someone to believe that way.
yeah. Well, okay. So let's talk about the moon landing conspiracy theory, and you frame up the problem pretty well. Why was some what's the motivation behind faking a moon landing? Right. I think that's the question that you have. I mean, there's no real plausible reason for someone to fake to like promote flat Earth theory, but there are reasons for faking the moon landing. So the whole moon landing, stemmed from the Cold War, right? So it's after World War II, the two superpowers, Russia, I think it's Russia. Is it USSR or Russia? I think it's USSR. No,
USSR at the
Soviet
time.
Union.
Well, yeah,
The
until
Soviet Union and
89,
United
90.
States were in the Cold War. It's proxy war across the world, and the war is actually, I mean, no single bullet was fired between Russia and the U.S., but there were a lot of activities around the world, right? To demonstrate ideology supremacy, right? Communism is better than capitalist, and capitalism is better than communism. So there were a lot of battles being fought. It happens in sports. It happens in countries around the world, and then space race happens to be one of the I guess arena for fighting this Cold War. So right after World War II, Russia was. For the lack of a better term, kicking Americans in the space race, with the Sputnik, launching men into the moon, not, and launching men into space, et cetera, et cetera. And U.S. was losing. So it made U.S. look bad. It made capitalist states look bad. The U.S. government, I think at the time was, well, I guess it started with one of the president, but I think Kennedy announced that hey, we want to launch a man into the moon because it's hard, not because it's easy. So there was a strong motivation by the U.S. to get a head start on the space race. You know this, right, James?
Yeah, yeah. So he had this 10-year, we're going to land a man on the moon, 10 years. Some of the articles suggest Russia was, yeah, Soviet Union was always ahead. We were always like behind by a year or sometimes just a month or so. So they were always sharing secrets. I don't know, stealing secrets. I don't know. I mean, but it kind of, it's a 4-minute mile type thing where once you kind of figure out something is possible, then it becomes plausible. People start, you do it. You figure out you
Yeah.
can't do it. So, yeah. So that is a thing. Like, how come if they were ahead the whole time, how did we suddenly come from behind and win the race? That's
Right.
something.
Right.
Moon landing
and
people.
and the finish line at the time doing the space race was to land a person on the moon and have the person safely return. That was kind of like the goal for both countries. And I think Russia was getting pretty close. Russia was like sending crabs and taking pictures on the far side of the moon. So it was pretty neck to neck. But in 1969, Apollo 11 was when U.S. Claimed victory on this space race by sending Buzz Al- Buzz not Buzz Lightyear, but Buzz
Buzz
Aldrin.
Lightyear. Yeah, so Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and was it John Glenn?
Yeah, the
Third
other
guy.
guy who went around the moon
Yeah,
that nobody remembers,
yeah,
right?
I
So
forgot
it
them
was
all.
Armstrong and Buzz Lightyear who set foot on the moon and came back. And even to this day, a lot of people are questioning if we actually went to the moon. So what are some of the conspiracy theories that you
Yeah,
can think of
so
where lead people to believe that we didn't make it to the moon?
yeah, so we're not going to get into all of the ones that have been rehashed.
Yeah, there are a
However,
lot. There were a lot of conspiracies.
yeah, I mean, we can look at some of the major ones, but yeah, after that guy wrote the book, I mean, people like to gravitate to something. So the whole space race, Soviet Union, The hoax complaints, conspiracy, and then you start getting into the science, which actually, if you're going to do arguments, these are probably the best things to do. You could say, well, how come? Because then they're going to have to defend things or just ignore them. The pluses, say, well, why were the little X's or pluses on the lens? That's a fair one. Stars is a big one about there not being any stars. That's somewhere on here. And they kind of explain in that light of when it's that bright outside, you just don't see stars even here on Earth. If you were in a bright parking lot at night, you wouldn't see the stars, and it was sort of daytime on Earth, so to speak. So there are more arguments for this that actually it's like, okay, why is there a C in the photo? How come there's a
Yeah.
C in the
So
photo?
so 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 before we get to that, James, if we didn't go to the moon, how did we take all those photos? And where did all those photos come from?
Well, okay. How did you get? I mean, we were talking before Photoshop. It's not like you can't do any manipulation at all because we have movies. We have we're constantly being quote lied to every day. Even in the '60s, we had movies. We had 2001. We had all this stuff showing. Even 2001, I guess technically had a lot of errors in it, but it was still pretty darn good. Hey, there's your Buzz Aldrin. But yeah, so how would you get all these photos? And you can see the pluses, and it's like, well, why are these things? But you also have to think, if you're faking this, why would you not? Why would you do stuff like this for fake photos? You know, why would you actually put the fake stuff in there? Why would you not put stars in if you're going to fake it? So all of these things, it actually makes less sense that you would actually fake it and make it with errors. It's like I think they were just doing the whole thing about the lunar landing and not seeing flame come out. They're saying, well, there's no atmosphere for the flame to ignite on. All those things. It's like, okay, so it makes kind of sense. But then they say, well, but maybe NASA knew that, and it was like a double, reverse psychology
It's like a double
twice.
fake.
Yeah.
So I,
So
I I don't know if you know about this. So one of the conspiracy theory was that so you mentioned Space Odyssey, 2001 Space Odyssey, and that was filmed in 1968 by a director Stanley Kubrick, a brilliant director. Who's by most people's argument is one of the most. It's considered a genius. So he made the movie in 1968. Now, just frame it up. So 1968, Cold War is at the peak. U.S. was losing to Russia in many fronts, and we have to show the world that capitalist is superior to communism, right? Those commie pigs, communist godless communists. So we have to show the world that we're going to win this race, right? And the thought process is that, the pressure is so high. We still don't think we could send a man to the moon and back at that time. So government says let's just fake it. Let's just fake it. And there are a lot of precedents, even since after 1969's moon landing, that government will fake something to show that we are ahead, or want the enemy to believe we are further along than we really are. So the conspiracies theorists believe that what happened was, the rocket was launched. People saw it. People went to Florida and saw, Buzz Lightyear and Neil Armstrong got into a rocket, flew into space. But the conspiracy theorists believed that they were just orbiting around the Earth for 7 days. Right, they didn't really go to the moon, and all the live feeds and all the films were actually filmed in a studio on Earth, right? By who? By Stanley Kubrick, who was the director of Space Odyssey. So Stanley Kubrick took all the learnings from Space Odyssey and NASA and U.S. government and Stanley Kubrick and their staff went to a studio, I think in Los Angeles, to take all these photos on what you and I see on the internet that represents the moon, right? So the conspiracy theorists believe that people were sent up into space, but they didn't actually go to the moon, and the photos and the videos were actually came from a studio, a movie studio in Los Angeles, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Have you heard of this theory?
yeah, that's a popular one too. There's just so many, and that's an interesting one. But again, it's the thing about these things. It's like the scientists will always say, "Okay," and they'll have an explanation. I don't know if there's any big ones where they just say, "You know what? That is a good question. We don't have any. That's nobody knows." But when they analyze if the fake footings, it's like, well, how would you do the? There's a certain way the plumes of dust have fallen. There's a certain way. the thrusting? How would you get the cable? It's like they weren't that good in 1969. I mean, they made 2001, but they're still. I don't think they were that good. And if you believe, the thing about the moon landing is like we can go back to like why you would fake it or why, but was it even scientifically possible is a good question that people might ask. Could you break free of Earth's orbit? Could you now if you broke free, that's the first part. Could you have enough fuel to get to another planet and steer yourself? Now, if I looked at it, I thought, well, I kind of think if you already believe you can get out of orbit at all, so Sputnik or other things, so were the Soviets faking this all too? Did they get something into orbit? And then once you're in orbit, then you really just have to have thrust and steering and just, it's not too hard. There's the moon. Keep aiming towards it. You go too far left, add a little thrust to the right. I mean, and then I guess the biggest thing that for me, it's like, wow, the most incredulous thing is like you landing. That seems like, okay, that's the hard part, kind of coming down, which is wild because it reminds me of the space things we do now, or they're landing that rocket straight down. I mean, having the thruster with Earth's gravity and not moon's, because moon's is like 1/6. So that's more, when people argue about that, the technology, okay, that's more like credible for conspiracy theory. I still think we did it, but and the other thing, yeah, when the follow-up for this is going to be, well, if we faked it, why didn't Russia like point it out, or in China, why didn't all these other countries that were competing with us kind of say, in all this time since we been there like 60 years, none of these other countries have said, you faked it, we have proof. Why don't they have proof? Because, well, most likely reason is because we were actually there. And the other thing is like, well, where is the stuff? So I haven't looked, but I haven't seen any photographs of the equipment there. But I assume the equipment's there and it's photographable, or you can see it with a really good telescope or one of the government's telescopes. But then if you believe the government's lying, anything they show you is a fake. All the photos from space are fake. Even photos today could be fake, depending on your level. There are people that believe satellites don't exist, that we've never gotten into orbit today. It's just too hard. Gravity is too strong. No one could get to orbit.
Yeah. All right, so here's a couple of main arguments. The hoax argument that supports a hoax, right? So some of the popular ones. Let's just run through it, and I want to get your thoughts on this, right? So I'll name off like 2, 3, 4 examples on why the hoax people believe that we never went to the moon, right? So the first one is the waving of American flag. So in some of the videos that we saw the American flag waving as Buzz Lightyear planted the American flag onto the ground. Now, how can the American flag wave if there's no air, there's no wind on the moon, right? So that must have been filmed on Earth. So what's your explanation for that, James?
That's one of the most popular ones, and that's a good one. Again, why would they do something fake if they knew it was going to be called out? There's a pole. It's clearly seen on the images too, that you can see this pole. But the pole is to go across to keep the flag from drooping down. 1/6 of gravity is still gravity. So the pole is keeping it center. The wrinkles are because it was wrinkled in travel, which actually even more suggests, because there's still gravity on the moon, just no wind. But when they set it down, and if you move something in motion, like Newton's object in motion tends to stay in motion, it's going to stay that way until something stops it. Eventually it would stop just from gravity alone. But yeah, it doesn't prove that there's wind on the moon. And didn't we agree this was inside a stout? They argue it's inside a studio. Why would there be wind inside a studio?
I don't know. It's probably the same people who came up with a flat earther, right? Someone opened the door in the studio and big gust of wind came through. Yeah. It's kind of a stretch of of an argument, right? So the official version from NASA is that you can see on the picture there's a little flag. You have a flagpole and you have a little thing across the top to kind of keep the American flag posted, right? So the waving was a result of astronaut twisting the pole onto the moon. right? So
Yep.
the
Yep.
twisting motion is causing the flag to waver a little bit, even in the vacuum. And I guess there were some photos or videos afterwards that once the astronaut walked away from it, the flag was perfectly still. There was no waving. The waving only took place when as the astronaut was pushing the pole into the moon.
That was after they
So
closed the
so
door and they wouldn't
yeah,
start
they
the
have
flight.
to close the door. That's right. So but that's a very popular conspiracy theory. And like, see, that's the reason why we never went to the moon. All right. So the second one, and you're a photographer, so you would know this, right? Why did we not see any stars on in these photos? I mean, if we're in the moon, right, we don't have atmosphere to obstruct the light. Why is it some of the photos we don't see stars in the background? They should be very, very bright. Why don't we see it? It's fake. It's got to be in the studio. Studio, they forgot to put up some stars in the background, so there are no stars. Why do you think that is, James?
Yep, that one's listed. As I remember, it was just too like yeah, you can see it. I think it's like here. Like why are there no stars here?
Yeah, there are no
It was
stars. It
just
should be super bright.
it just also depends on exposure. They're dealing with such extreme highlights that when you do the extreme highlights, you're going to lose some of the darker areas. When you like, otherwise, you're going to have it like blown out. I had a friend take a picture of me years ago for a headshot, and he did it inside this building with like all these people in the back of me and and it was like lit up as a regular time of day. It was like all this light was there, and yet because of the exposure settings and what he did, you couldn't see the background. All you saw was my face. I think he might have used a flash too, so that was part of it. But the weird part was, yeah, you had such a bright part of the face that none of the background was there, so it all kind of got darkened out. So I've seen that firsthand. That it's entirely plausible that you wouldn't have stars.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened right here. The NASA's official argument is that retort is that the astronaut suit was so bright and the sun was so bright that in order to properly expose the astronaut, the shutter speed would have to be so fast that it blocked out anything in the back that's not as bright as the moon's surface and the brightness of the astronaut suits. And it makes sense, as a person who done some photography. If you expose the camera to the brightest object in the frame, you're going to lose a lot of things in the back. And then the real version, these photos was just the shutter speed was so fast that it would just even the stars might be really bright. It's not bright enough when compared to the reflection coming from the moon's surface and the astronauts' suits. So that's why these photos didn't see stars. So I think it's being deep. I don't know if debunk's the right word, but the official story
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, busted or debunked. Yeah, there was. I suppose I didn't realize that, but there was an astronaut that during one of it might have been Apollo 11 or 12, or after that 14 or whatever. He dropped a feather and like a hammer or something like that. And they fell at the same speed, so you kind of had to be in a vacuum. How do you do a vacuum in a sound studio? I mean, that just sounds like an impossibly insane thing to do because things fall the same speed in a vacuum.
Hey, we have a viewer who's asking a question, and the question is, are you following all the
Yeah,
question?
I haven't looked in a bit. Why are you such different rooms? Isn't it harder to?
Riff off.
Uh,
I think we can riff off each other just fine.
yeah, I'm not having any
I
problems.
mean, to our naive viewer, there's a thing called the internet and technology. It's probably the same person who believes Earth is flat. So,
You're a flat
the per-
earther. We already
flat
covered that.
earther.
Now, here's the thing. We talk about science and technology, and this is something I just find extremely fascinating. That because we're talking about different gravity. How do you even define gravity?
How do you define
How do you
gravity?
define gravity? How would you define gravity? And I only know. I'm only
Uh,
asking because I looked it up 30 minutes ago, so I'm not like an expert.
define gravity. Well, gravity is the attraction between two masses, right? So when there are two masses of a large at the atomic level, there's like attraction, not like I'm attracted to you, but there's a physical pull toward each other. So it happens at the atomic level. Does that answer your question? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I kind of like go to Newton and the whole. I mean, we kind of have the basic that mass attracts based on its size and distance to other mass, which is
Yes.
great. But when you get down deeper, it's like, well, then what causes that attraction? It's not magnetic and it's not nuclear. And those are like the two biggest, mostly understood levels of attraction. It's neither. It goes into Einstein's theory of relativity at that point, and you're getting time and space warping, all this kind of time space continuum, all that stuff. Gravity is actually not that well understood, and yet that's one of our like most fundamental concepts. Yeah, we experience gravity every day. I mean, it's like we don't understand it that well, but we still can drop something and see the effect of it. So, despite everything, so it's interesting that when we deal with something so simple like that, even us today, scientists today, don't really understand it all that well, and then it becomes very theoretical, which is just mind blowing. It's like I had no idea, but I always thought, oh yeah, mass attracts mass. But it's like, well, why does mass attract mass? Oh, time space continuum warping around like black holes, and it gets
It's
so
Klingons.
but really, it does get extremely theoretical. I think we have a better idea of like the electrons,
Yeah, that's a
protons.
good question. I mean, I know there was, when I took physics in one of my classes, engineering classes, it talked about, I think it's just a fact that mass attract other mass, right? But I don't really know the theory behind it. I'm sure there's some quantum
Yeah, yeah,
theories
yeah.
behind
I
why
mean,
mass attract to each other, but I don't know.
I just looked up a tiny bit because I saw a big video on this and it was like blew my mind. And it was like, at the
Maybe one of
top
our
level.
viewer who knows, maybe one of our viewer who two of them are engineering students, so maybe they just finished a class on the theory behind mass. Um, um, and that's one of the conspiracy theories. Like, well, why, if you look at the astronauts, the videos of astronauts, moonwalking, not like Michael Jackson moonwalking, but like hop around the space. And if you speed that up, it looks like a regular person, like hopping across the sound studio in Los Angeles, right? So yeah, many conspiracy theorists believe that the those astronauts slowly hopping around the space. It's a video of astronauts in Los Angeles just hopping across a sound studio and then slowing it down. And,
Yeah,
and there was some video showing that if you just that, slow it down, it looks exactly the same as astronauts. The videos that were given by NASA.
there's a good video out there that kind of explains that it wasn't physically possible to do that because the length of the recording was so long that you just didn't have enough film. There wouldn't have been enough film to do that. Like you would need like 10 hours of film, something weird. But they don't mention the film thing here, which is odd. Well, they probably have the word film on this page, but there was something about film speed.
One of our subscribers just smashed the like button. Let's
All
see how many
right.
subscribers do we have now. Three. We still have three subscribers. Make sure you
All right. Yeah.
smash the subscribe button, not just like button.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, that was the thing about it's like I couldn't find that one for this, but the whole thing about the film it just wasn't physically possible. The moon brought up this whole new phenomenon that we had never experienced before. No man had ever been in 1/6 gravity. We'd never shot video and photos on the moon. So all the stuff NASA was doing, I think if it was fake, NASA would have assumed, oh, you see stars in space. Oh, you would have this in space, or the dust would have. The dust wasn't. I don't think they had dust samples, but they found the dust isn't the same type of dust we have here because there's no atmosphere. So there are all these things, all these reasons why that it seems like mistakes because we just never experienced that phenomenon before. So that was kind of fascinating. It's again,
Right
it's
here.
more credible than flat Earth, but I think we went there only for one of the main reasons. I just don't think you can keep a secret that long. If you had to pick, like, what's the
Well,
number one reason why?
so that's one of the argument is that, like, there were close to 400,000 people working on the Apollo 11 mission, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever, right? And the argument is that, like, well, if this was kept, how do you silence 400,000 people? Someone's going to come out and say, "Oh, no, no, I was there. We never actually went, make it to the moon, right?" So there is a counter argument to that, right? The counter argument is if you look at a company like Apple, there were tens of thousands of people who were working on a product at Apple. I think an example is the iPhone. There were tons of people who were working on things, but they didn't know that they were working on the iPhone until the day it was launched, right? So all these 400,000 of people, because everything is compartmentalized, right? They want to make sure that the competitor don't get the secret sauce, don't know what they're working on. It was that important, so they compartmentalized everything. So if you I talked to a lot of people who worked at Apple at that time. And honestly, they did not know they were working on an iPhone until after it was announced. They go, "Oh, well, that's what I was working on the whole time." So that part is pretty believable. That if NASA wanted to, they can compartmentalize the development of the moon launch so that 400,000 people don't know. They're just working on a small component. They have no idea what's going on. They think they're working on something that's going to the moon, when in reality, maybe only about 100 people. You can control 100 people to say, "Hey, we're going to make this conspiracy theory. It's going to be 50 people in the filming studio." So only 100 people or so, not 400,000 people, only 100 people or so would know that we never actually went to the moon,
Yeah,
right? So
I've heard that.
that argument makes
Yeah,
sense.
you can't because it's like it really takes the 400,000. It's like it's a really good rebuttal against the 400,000, and I believe it probably wasn't even anywhere near because of secrecy and their other things. They didn't tell everyone exactly what they're doing and when they're doing, so it's very likely a very small percentage. But again, you mentioned 100. Who I don't know. We'll never know exactly. 100 people keeping a secret and not telling why. I mean, the sort of the audacity or a level of that kind of a secret of just one person. You just gotta, once you tell someone anything, it's not a secret anymore. It's out there. So the chance of it spreading, you can't even say it's 50-50. It's immeasurable. It's whatever the other person wants it to be. It could be 0 because they're going to go blab it out to the first person, or it could be a 99 because they're pretty good at keeping secrets. So it's not really measurable, but even 100 people, I still think it would just
It's
take one
hard
person on
to
the
hold it down.
deathbed. Yeah, and that's again assuming 100 people didn't tell a soul, not their wives, not their kids, not someone, their mistresses, whatever, or their hookers. They just told nobody.
Well, one
So
of the argument is that so the conspiracy theory is that Stanley Kubrick, who was the director behind all the footages of astronauts in space, in a recent documentary called Room 237, it's a documentary about The Shining, the movie. Um, in it, it has some references to Apollo 13 missions, Apollo 11 mission. It's references to NASA, and conspiracy theorists believe that Stanley Kubrick, when he made that film, was his way of letting the world knows that we never went to the moon. It was him all along that filmed all the footages of us being in space. But that's a conspiracy
yeah,
theory. And if you watch that 237, I think it's a stretch, the documentary, but some people believe that that was his way of telling the world that we never went to the moon.
yeah. Well, there's they mention it here, and I'm not saying Wikipedia is the best place for this stuff, but if you want to dig deeper, go to the footnotes at the bottom and start clicking. And at some point, you just have to accept people's word for things. Like I'll never know any hard evidence for sure. I have to accept that the government's not lying. All the footage is real. The arguments and counter arguments are real. So that's why, to me, the moon landing and flat Earth are entirely different beasts of conspiracy theories. I mean, at some point, I've never been to Australia. How can I can't prove it's there. I'm accepting
Yeah.
it's there. I can accept that electricity hurts when you touch it because I've actually touched an outlet, like with a live cord or something like that, several times when I was a kid. It's been a while. I've touched a car thing. 40,000 volts have gone through my body. So there's things you can experience, and the other things you just kind of have to, assume people aren't lying to you, and it kind of gets down to like people just do not want to believe the government ever tells the truth, or the more incredulous something is, the more less likely it is to be true. And the moon landing was a pretty big thing. I think that's one of the biggest things we've ever done. I mean, as far as
It's pretty
just
amazing looking back. What was what was done in a short amount of time? The scope, the technology, the ingenuity that they had to that had to have gone into moon landing. So one of the question, what I want to get your thoughts on this, right? So why haven't we gone back? The last mission, moon mission was Apollo 17 in 1972. That's what my math's a little stale here. So that's what 50 years ago, over 50 years ago. Why haven't we gone back?
well, the whole reason we went there, as we've mentioned at the beginning, was this space race. Literally, it's a competition. It was named a competition, and it should try to be the winner. What was the prize? Pride. I mean, there was no real. Now, there are arguments about, well, the technology lent itself to the satellite program, GPS, all the good stuff we have today, the internet, satellite TV. But there's arguments, well, we could have done that without going to the moon. It wasn't necessary to go to the moon to make these advancements. And I would more buy along the line with that. If that money had been spent if that money had been spent to feed people like in Africa, there's arguments there. So it was extremely expensive, adjusted for inflation. I don't know the numbers. I could get the numbers, or you can just get them yourself. Extremely expensive, and we're losing money. I think it was the Vietnam War. It was just changes in government. We're realizing, why are we spending this much money? We already won. There's actually no real good reason to go back to the moon, and there hasn't been. I mean, aside from
Yeah, I
we're
think
using up the Earth and we got to live somewhere else in the future. That's an argument. But yeah.
I think the motivation at that time, it was fun. It was heavily funded. That's one of the arguments that the Russians just didn't have as much resources as the U.S. did at that time. I mean, we just had tons of money to put into the space program. It did cost us a lot of money, and once we crossed the finish line, and really, you asked the question, what was the price, right? The price at the time, in the context of the Cold War, was a big middle finger to the communists. It wasn't a pride thing. It was more of a, hey, if we could do this, what else can we do, right? Keeping our enemy at the time on their heels. And the reason why, I mean, the real argument that a lot of people have on why we haven't gone back, it was just so expensive, right? What's the return on investment? We have a investment podcast channel. I don't know if I would buy a stock that just says, hey, I'm a company that doing good for humanity, right? I want a return on investment, and going back to the moon, the return on investment is just not very high. It's good for human maybe, but you can't make any money doing that, and I believe that's the reason why we have not gone back since 1972.
Yeah,
So
the
in
money, I
conclusion,
think, got
James,
the money
go ahead.
got diverted into what they were working on the whole time in parallel was rockets delivering nuclear missiles, and that's not so much all pride. That's basically believing in defending your country, or mutually assured destruction, where you got to make sure. That's the arms race was probably the other big race of the big time, and that was one where you're working on rockets, you're working on technology, and that has not stopped. That's been continually going on ever since World War II. Things changed completely. So anyway, that's another topic. We could discuss that in the future, but leave comments if you want us to discuss anything in particular. And make sure we answer the questions on the chat. I like the camera setup. Cool. And that was fun. If we
I,
get some
I
more
have a
guests.
green halo around me, and then
Yeah, you
so
need
we have
better
to
light.
fix
I
that.
don't see, and I have the same green screen, so it's your lighting. It's your
Yeah,
studio lighting. I'm
I
trying
think
to work on that.
have a good job on getting the audio working. We're going to provide a good job on having a website that we can reference. So this is a great setup for future coffee and cookie shows. But we took a pretty serious subject this time around. I mean, in the past we're gonna have fun talking about investment. This is a very serious topic. Flat earther and moon landing
Well, it doesn't have to be
conspiracies.
serious. I mean, it's sort of like, again, you're telling people their
It's a
whole.
heavy subject.
Yeah, I mean, it's heavy, but it's like, I don't know if people. I hope people aren't too offended. I guess when you're telling someone you're flat out wrong and what you believe isn't right is not fun to hear, but it also should spark, well, let's debate it. But we already said, well, we're not really going to have debates with flat earthers, but actually moon people, Moon people, I don't know. That would be worth talking about. Most comments have
Well,
been really too negative.
in the end, do you believe we went to the moon?
Yeah, yeah. I just think it would be too hard to cover that up,
Yeah, I think we went to the moon too.
if no other
It,
reasons.
it was just too I mean what's hard to believe. I mean, I think today we could go back to the moon if somebody would fund it. It'll be very, very expensive, but it is hard to believe that 50 years ago, all these really smart people figured out a way to send three people to the moon, put them on the moon, and brought them back safely. I mean, it's just astounding, all the things that must have gone right.
Yeah, but we had.
I
I think people forget the advancements. I know. Yeah, the modern iPhone. Even 10 years ago, they're saying an iPhone had a better computer than the moon. The whole everything in any module. But technology after World War II, or even during World War II, ramped up considerably due to again competition or the need to win a war. That's why you had like nuclear atom being split so effectively. If you look at things, you look at some of the technology at the time, the Nordic, which was the kind of the machine to calculate where a bomb needed to land, and it was so top secret. They had actually like self destructs, like almost out of a science fiction movie, on the Nordic machines, and said, it's better for you to die with this machine than this machine fall into enemy hands, which is kind of the opposite of Enigma, I guess, in some ways. But yeah, technology was going pretty fast after 1940s.
All right. Anything else you want to cover on these two conspiracy
I
theories?
think
I
we
mean,
have
there are.
about an hour or so. Like
That
we
was an hour.
open for more
Wow, time
ideas.
flies when you're having fun. I mean, there are other. I mean, just to wrap things up, right? What other big conspiracy theories can you think of that are fresh in people's minds?
Gosh, I saw there's a video I saw last week or a couple weeks ago about conspiracy theories, and it listed a whole bunch of them. Yeah, well, you go, and I'll just see like because it doesn't come to my
Well,
mind.
the more recent one is the MH370. That's the Malaysian airline that gone missing. I think in 2014. There's a lot of conspiracy theories around that. Conspiracy theory,
Nine
Thought
eleven
Lost
is one.
Past is a big one. What 9/11 is
Nine
another big
eleven. Well,
one.
people don't believe. I mean, that was just, or I guess it's one thing to believe the buildings weren't blown up, but why? I guess. I mean, if you're gonna argue,
Well, I
and
think
you
the
really
conspiracy
argue,
around 9/11 was, the government knew about it and they let it happen. Kind of like Pearl Harbor conspiracy theory, right? They let it happen so we can go to war. That was
oh,
the
they wanted it.
conspiracy
Yeah,
theory. Yeah, and
maybe
another
that's not even
conspiracy
new.
theory is that Obama, like Michelle Obama, is actually a man. It's
I
a
haven't heard that.
yeah,
Uh,
it's true.
I don't think
Type it
that's
up,
a.
look it up.
Oh yeah, we're forgetting JFK. I mean, remember some of these
JFK, that's a
things.
big one.
JFK was big. Climate change, vaccines, and I always wonder: is that everything? Is that
Vaccine, that's a big
polio?
one.
Is a polio vaccine bad? Or are you not getting gonna get you get kids have polio?
Flat Earth
Uh,
is that moon landings number one. JFK vaccine.
Gosh, there's another one. Area 51
Disney
and
crater frozen
aliens.
as a distraction, huh?
Area 51 aliens. That's a big one.
Oh, a big one. Denver International Airport is a Illuminati headquarters. That's a
Yeah,
big
yeah,
one.
yeah. That was part of the video I watched a few years ago. They said there's all this stuff going on there, and that whole because Denver, I guess they were building a big new belt, new site. I hadn't even heard the story before, but I guess they were building some airport luggage transport system that all had to get canceled because it sucked. I just thought, didn't you have anyone testing this at small scale before you actually canceled? Chemtrails is another one. Yeah, there's a whole. Oh man, there's a list here. Yeah, we're here. Aviation, chemtrails, Korean Airlines. Oh, so basically any air disaster. Yeah, Malaysia, deep
Loch Ness
water,
monster.
New
Loch
Coke,
Ness monster.
Loch Ness
New
monster,
Coke.
New
And
Coke.
with New Coke, I don't know if that. Well, yeah, I guess there are a couple of conspiracy theories that I think they were debunked. Some of it was that New Coke was trying to was a marketing ploy, try to sneak in fructose corn syrup instead of using real sugar.
Death of Nero, JFK, Harold Holt. Oh
Um,
yeah, what's that guy? The Teamsters guy back in the. I forgot his name.
oh yeah, it's
Jimmy
Hoffa,
Hoffa? Was it Jimmy Hoffa? Yeah, Jimmy Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa.
Predicting
Uh,
Corwin and George Soros. Some of these I haven't even heard of. Anyway, Freemason. Yeah. All right. My battery's dying actually, so good time to stop.
All right, that was good. With that,
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks for joining. If you like to hear about more conspiracy theories in the future, put in a comment, and we'll we'll give you our thoughts. I don't know, it's backed up with a lot of scientific facts, but we'll just tell you what our thoughts.
Okay. All right.
All
Thanks
right,
for
that was fun,
joining.
James.
Next
That
time.
was good job setting it up. Looking forward to doing more coffee and cookie shows. Thanks, everybody.